3 weeks into planning my app, I realized the feature I was most excited about was the one nobody actually wanted. If I had skipped this step and just started building, the way most developers do, I would have spent 5 or 6 months writing code for an app that was going to die quietly in the App Store with just 11 downloads. I'm a software engineer and I shipped an AI skincare app solo on both iOS and Android. It's called MyGlowLab. Before I wrote a single line of code, I ran the idea through a validation process using AI, and it completely changed what I built. In this video, I'm going to show you that exact process, the prompts, what to look for, and what AI genuinely cannot tell you, no matter how good your prompt is. If you've ever had an idea sitting in a notebook for 2 years and you just don't know if it's worth building, this is the video I wish I'd had. Here's the uncomfortable truth about indie apps. The App Store is a graveyard. Millions of apps sitting there with single-digit downloads, and almost all of them have one thing in common. The developer fell in love with their idea, opened their IDE, and started building. They skipped the one step that could have saved them 6 months of their life: validation. The reason developers skip it is because the old way of validating an idea was genuinely painful. You needed user interviews, you needed surveys, you needed to recruit strangers on Reddit and bribe them with Amazon vouchers to talk to you for 30 minutes. Most of us just don't have the time, the budget, or honestly the social energy for that, especially when you're building on the side of a full-time job like me. So we skip it, we tell ourselves we'll figure it out as we go, and then 6 months later we're staring at a launch with no users. Here's what's actually different now. AI can do roughly 70% of what those expensive interviews and surveys used to do in an afternoon. It's not perfect, it will not replace real conversations completely, and I'll be very clear about that later in the video, but it's good enough to kill a bad idea before you build it, and it's good enough to sharpen a good idea before you commit 5 months to it. That's the difference, and that's what I want to walk you through. Step 1. Competitor research. The first thing I did was open Gemini. You can use ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you have. And I asked it a very specific and simple question. Not what apps exist in this space. That's too broad, and you'll get a Wikipedia answer. The prompt that actually worked was something like this. Three things matter in that prompt. Top 15, not top 5. You want the long tail because that's where the gaps are. Complaints, not features. The complaints are where the opportunity lives. And table stakes, because if you launch without those, you're dead before you start. What I got back was a structured list. Some of it was already obvious to me. Some of it genuinely wasn't. There were 2 apps in my space I had never heard of that were doing something better than the ones I had been studying. That alone saved me from a positioning mistake. The output is the starting point, not the answer. Take what AI gives you and verify it. Open the App Store, read the actual reviews. AI will sometimes be confidently wrong about what an app does, so cross-check before you commit anything to a roadmap. Step 2. Build a real picture of the user. Most developers either skip this entirely or do the lazy version where they say, my user is a 30-year-old professional. That's useless. You can't design for that. You can't write an app for that. You can't pick features for that. The prompt I used was, that last bit, what would make them tell a friend about this app, is the most important sentence in the prompt. Because that is the bar. If your app doesn't clear it, you have an app but you don't have any growth. When I ran this for MyGlowLab, one persona that came back was someone I had not been designing for at all. And once I saw it written out, I realized that persona was actually one of the most important ones. I shifted the value proposition to include them. The original target was too narrow. Step 3. Demand signals. This is the step that separates real validation from wishful thinking. A persona tells you who the user might be. Demand signals tell you whether they actually exist in numbers and whether they are actively looking for what you're about to build. 3 sources I used: App Store review mining, Reddit thread analysis, and search intent. I asked AI to identify the most upvoted and searched negative reviews on the top 3 competitors and grouped them into themes. If the same complaint shows up across 3 apps, That is a market gap with a flashing neon sign on it. By the end of this step, I had a document with 3 columns: problem, evidence the problem is real, and how many users actually want this problem to be solved. Step 4, the most important step: sharpen the value proposition until it cuts. Almost every failed app I have ever seen had the same problem. The founder couldn't tell you in one sentence why someone would pick their app over the alternatives. If you can't answer that question, your users definitely can't. The prompt I used here was, you will get 5, most will be mediocre, 1 or 2 will be sharp. You take the sharpest one and you stress test it. You ask AI, argue against this positioning. What would make this fail? Who would not care? What competitor could copy this in a week? That last question matters more than people think. If your edge can be copied in a week, it isn't an edge, it's just a feature. By the end of this round, I had one line description of MyGlowLab that I could repeat in my sleep. Everything I built after that was filtered through it. Let me tell you what this process actually changed for me. I got a validation that the problems I'm solving for are real. I was able to refine the user personas I'm targeting, and I was able to fine tune and finalize my value proposition. And that value proposition actually helped me decide what my final app is going to look like. Now I have to be honest about the limits of this as well. Because if you walk away from this video thinking AI is a replacement for talking to real people, I've made things worse, not better. Here's what AI validation actually is. It's a very fast mirror of what is already said publicly on the internet. App Store reviews, Reddit threads, Twitter complaints. AI can synthesize that brilliantly. That's a real superpower compared to where we were 3 years ago. Here's what it is not. It is not a predictor of new demand. If your idea is genuinely novel, something nobody has articulated yet, AI cannot validate it for you. There's no signal to mirror. You have to go and find real humans. It also cannot tell you how someone will actually behave when your app is in their hand. People say one thing in reviews and do something completely different. So the honest workflow is this: use AI to do 70% of the research in an afternoon, then go and have 5 real conversations. 5 is enough. You're not running a study, you're just checking whether the picture AI gave you matches reality. If 5 users say the same thing AI research said, you're probably right. If they contradict it, AI was wrong and you just saved yourself 5 months. That's the validation workflow. Competitor research, persona, demand signals, sharpened value proposition, 5 real conversations to ground truth the whole thing. If you do this honestly, you'll either kill your idea, which is a gift because you just saved yourself 6 months, or you'll start building with real conviction that something is on the other side of all that work. Validation done. The next phase is the one most developers are quietly terrified of, including me: making the app actually look good without hiring a designer or learning Figma from scratch. That's the next video. The exact design workflow I used to ship a premium looking app solo with zero design background. If you want that, subscribe so that you don't miss it, and drop one thing in the comments. What's the app idea you've been sitting on? I'll try to reply to every comment. See you in the next one. Thank you.